Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to 345 Tech Talks. I'm here with Chris Tabb, who is a partner in Leading Edge IT and a big data expert. And we're going to talk about all sorts of things data today. So welcome, Chris. Great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me. And yeah, my favourite topic, data. So yeah, happy to chat about it.
So that's great. I mean, I think the first thing is, Chris, for you to just say a little bit about yourself and really, but specifically, what really interests you about data and what made you get into it? Why did you get into it?
So I think the first thing I pretty much fell into it. Pretty much, so my first proper job after college was working for a company called Cognos. And I went in there as not as a technical role, but I went in there and saw the opportunity to attend the courses, learn their products. So I was doing OLAP reporting using a product called PowerPlay back then, and impromptu for standard list reportings and tabular reporting. Yep. Is something impromptu, and I just loved it. I always like numbers, but actually bringing those numbers to life and actually giving some business context to it. So I do remember the finance director. He came down and he saw I was playing around in PowerPlay with some data. He goes, well, "What are you doing now? Whose data's that?" So it was our data, and it was actually, rather than just doing these courses, I think back then it was tenting information. It was like a campsite information they had on the in the catalogue you used to report against. So it was actually putting some context. So. And yeah, being able to tie those two things up, I had a good business understanding, but I was understanding the data to bring those two things together and give it its own life. Was seen to keep me interested, keep me working late most nights working on it. Yeah, so that was how I got in. That was how I got into it, and then since then. Number of data roles, so doing ETL development, I said the reporting, became a database administrator at one point, then started moving into architecture, data architecture, and went on to head up architecture at a few places and engineering teams and a CTO until I joined forces with my two other partners in Leading Edge IT a couple of years ago, and the three of us have known each other 20 odd years. And we decided to, rather than just work as individual contractors, let's come together with the knowledge we built up over the years and try and share that with businesses to make the data world a better place.
Yeah, and not only that, one of the things that's great about that is that you've got other people to share the journey with, isn't it, as well? So that just running a business can be a lonely thing, but if you've actually got some people that you can share the journey with, it's a great thing.
Exactly, because I have my weaknesses in certain areas, and the other guys are able to fill those ones. So collectively, we're more than individuals. So yeah, it's working very well, enjoying it. Long days, but yeah, it's doing what I enjoy, at least working in data.
Fantastic. So what are some of the most common business problems people ask you to solve? So people bring you in and say, "I've got this," okay, your expertise is data, but I've got this problem. What are they looking for? Because ultimately, we don't do data for its own sake. We do it to solve a problem.
No, exactly, and I think that's a really good point. Is you need to find out the reason why this company wants to become more data driven, and if it's technically led. So basically, it's a new CTO's come in and he wants to go and get all the new toys and play around with it without any business involvement. It's not going to succeed. So I think the first thing is really to understand what's driving it. Is it the CEO was telling the CTO we need to be data driven now. Just being data driven for the sake of it,
it's a bit of a it's a very bland statement, isn't it? Unless you're actually, I mean, what?
Yeah.
So well, let's just go down that a bit. So what does being data driven? What does that actually mean?
So I think so. This is something that data warehousing being around for ages, and data warehousing was very down at the end of the process. So it was normally an afterthought really of most platforms or systems. So and being that afterthought or that overnight batch thing, it was very much looking at what you could do historically.
Yeah.
You're already a day late anyway, and it wasn't able to give you that real-time views or be able to optimize your business operationally intraday or be able to react very quickly. So I think to be able to move that decisioning, that analysis, that workflow further up into your operational systems now, and maybe still using your warehouse to drive and train the algorithms that are going to help with those operational purposes. But those decisioning, those need to be moved further up. If you're using a data warehouse that someone's running a BI report and then going, oh, I think we should go and sell more over here, or I think maybe we should try a different product line. That's not being data. That's being very reactive and not proactive.
Yeah. It's the thing, isn't it? It's the difference between looking. You're in the car and it's like you've got three things, haven't you? You've got the rear view mirror, and the rear view mirror, the data warehouse is your rear view mirror.
Yes.
And then you've got your speedometer, which is like what's happening right now, and then you've got your sat nav, which is where am I going. And,
is it very good? Is that descriptive or prescriptive? So yeah, descriptive is the rear view mirror. I think prescriptive maybe is your Tesla that's actually doing your auto driving for you, and that's the opposite end of the spectrum. It's a good analogy, yeah. So yeah, I think to your question of what makes a company data driven, it's not being that reactive, that descriptive analytics, is being that prescriptive analytics. What looking to see what you can do to change things earlier on, and actually having that data to support that. I mean, everyone's talking about machine learning now and AI, and it's. I'm not going to go into different terminologies of ML, if it's machine learning AI now, but that collectively that capability that everyone's after now, and being able to embed those decisions but also explain them as well. So I mean that's another really big factor, is that if you can't explain
AI is a huge thing.
Yeah. In fact, I was on a call with one of the guys, one of the partners we work with, Selden, actually, who specialise in machine learning and AI from training the algorithm from a visual representation. They were showing me how it was training to recognise trucks. And then after that, it showed us the explainers saying what were the characteristics that made us decide that it was a truck, and to be able to have that from a platform to be able to evidence. Okay, this is the decision, and this is why we made it, and removing that human. We make mistakes as humans, and sometimes we have emotional attachments to things, and we make decisions based on that. And you can't explain them, but at least with having those data points and saying, okay, this is the reason why that decision was made. It makes ethical AI a better place.
And that's it. I mean, if you've got widgets going down a production line, you're saying which ones are good and which ones are bad. There isn't too much ethical stuff involved in it. It's just it's a purely functional. But when you've got AI that is making decisions on people's lives, can I have this loan, or even will I be selected for interview for this job? Those are they're kind of you need to be able to explain that, because but then again, that's a whole kind of other.
It's a really good topic. Maybe that's a whole other session of
that's a whole one on its
within
own.
AI.
So let's say you're being brought in to do a data project. I mean, where do you start? What are the questions you ask? What are the first things you ask? You go in, get you in. How do you start the discovery process of what are the things you ask?
Yeah, so I mean, good way. You need to get the key step. Well, first of all, who the stakeholders are. I mean, that's the first question you need to ask. Who are the people who influence or people that we're doing this for? So I think that's the first thing, and then it's a little bit about maturity of understanding where they are at the moment, and understanding where they want to get to. So then you've got an idea of what the driving factors are, who you're supporting, who's supporting this particular project or transformation, and then you could go into more. It's more the technical aspects of cloud, which cloud provider you want to use. Are you on-prem? Do you have any on-prem data centers? Is there any aspiration to decommission those? It's really understanding the maturity of the technology and the cloud maturity, but then also the business maturity, because I think I've said this so many times. The technology is the easy part.
It does what you tell it to, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure if the group of techies, we could build the best technical solution using the best products, but the hard part is getting people to work with it, to actually understand how people can make changes. I mean, data ops is a massive thing as well, and I mean, there's lots of data ops tools out there, but it's more about a methodology and a way of working and how those teams all work together. And taking some of that stuff from Agile or scaled Agile, using the SAFe frame of having those feature sets, but then understanding a team that can deliver that feature set, an end-to-end team. So you're not very much in a very complex release cycle where you've got to wait for one department to finish something before you can start yours. Working cross-functional. I think one of my business partner likes to use a slice of the pie. You just gradually take a slice out end to end.
We use the same thing.
Initially.
Because otherwise, it's one of those things that if you just build out one particular, because you kind of got the horizontal slices, which we mean by technologies. You've got the technologies, so you've got the data platforms, then you've got the Spark or whatever, and that's crunching the numbers, and then you've got the presentation layer. So you've got those layers, but you build one of those, it's no use to anyone because you haven't got an end-to-end. You actually haven't got anything end to end, but whereas when you do the vertical slice all the way through of the whole pie,
exactly.
It's like if you're I know what you mean, because if you got a trifle and you're just getting the jelly out of the bottom, it's no use. You want to get the spoonful down the whole lot.
Exactly. I haven't been a party. I've had jelly and ice cream for a while, but trifle one anyway. It's an iterative process, and I think understanding where you are from a starting point, understanding where they want to get to, is part of that upfront analysis, to get them to where they want to go.
So I mean, there's a question we're going to get to in a second, which is where does responsibility for all this sit? But one of the things I think would be a good precursor to that is just about people and culture and their attitude to data, and whereabouts. When you're looking at where people are, how much of that is actually the culture across a business of their receptiveness to solving problems with data?
Yeah, it's depending on the size of the organisation, depending on how bad that problem is, and I think when some people will hear, if we want a data scientist, and they go and hire this one guy who sits in the corner in isolation.
Then magic happens.
And if he's not embedded within the business, if he's not part of that technology to understand getting access to that data, then there's not going to succeed. And it goes both ways, because I think the business working close with data scientists can understand what they can do, what value they can add, and it'll help them understand. Okay, we're able to do these sort of things. Oh, okay, maybe we should try that. And not knowing what they can do, and the other way around, the data scientists they don't know the business. They don't. I mean, they may be great educational background, and no Python, no R, and don't know the deep knowledge of maths, but they may not know the business industry they're working in, of how it operates, or how it's brought together or structured. So
it comes right back to
cross-pollination.
It comes right back to what you said at the first, like what getting the stakeholders saying what problem you're trying to solve.
Exactly it.
And it's getting everyone else lined up behind that they're all you need to get everyone understanding that these are the problems that are valuable to solve with this. And
yeah, and which leads you on to that you know where it sits, and
Yeah,
I'm a big believer in community and collaboration, and having having that data community defined,
yeah,
which yeah, it crosses that, you know, the business versus IT,
yeah,
just them all part of that community. But I think the other thing that we found is that um, the community can benefit from other initiatives. So if you find someone or a problem out there that you know you can solve that helps with your technical roadmap, you know, you focus on that. That helps the next person that comes along when they want to do something. They can benefit from that previous foundations or component or capability that's been introduced by that other one. And as the community see that, there's less resistance from maybe a project manager or a product owner going, oh, that's not, I don't need that for
yeah.
my project. Oh, yeah, just let's take the shortcut. You know, let's just do it do it dirty just to get it in there. But if you keep
But,
doing lots of very small tactical initiatives, yeah, great. You know, that product may go live. But eventually you'll start slowing down. It'll be very
because
very hard to
because
make changes.
you then get the legacy issue, don't you? That you know,
Yeah, yeah.
a lot of tactical stuff builds technical debt, and then soon you
Oh,
know, sooner or later you got to pay it back. And
yeah.
it's always yeah, every single technology project is a balance between, you know, certainly long programs are a balance between getting stuff done and out and released, and
yeah.
managing technical debt so that it doesn't get too out of control. And
So yeah, one of my phrases are quite, you know, technical debt causes friction. You know,
yeah,
it slows things down. So yeah, and the reason why lots of these small startups are able to work, you know, quite quickly and get things going is because, you know, they haven't had that technical debt. But
but
you
they'll
know,
have it eventually.
going on is eventually if they keep doing lots of things that are very they'll be in the same place that the legacy bricks and mortar companies that they, you know, they've been
Yeah,
taken over. They'll be in the same situation as those guys.
yeah,
So,
and then some other startup will come along that's
yes.
yeah, because you know, you start, yes, again, getting off topic of it, but startups tend to do one thing and do one thing well, and
Yeah.
then they grow, and then they start to try to bolt on all this other stuff, and then that becomes what slows them down. And as the market shifted, some other competitor will come in just at that place and say, well, where you are now, that you've built up all this legacy, we're gonna just start where you've ended up, and just do that better. And
Exactly. Learn by their mistakes and just go
yeah,
fast track it.
yeah. So I mean, we're talking about where does responsibility sit, and you're saying the best thing is with a community. Then there's kind of a one of the trendy things to talk about is having a chief data officer.
Yes.
And yeah, what your thoughts on that in terms of responsibility? Because on the one hand, you know, it's like, do you need someone to lead that community? But on the other hand, is it that's then not having responsibility in the community, but putting it in one person?
So yeah, I've been in some places where, you know, that they have done made that hire, and it's good if you are going to go and hire a CDO, have a clear understanding what the CIO is responsible for and what your CDO is responsible for, and even the CTO if you've got one
Yeah,
of them as well. I've seen a bit of a movement now for having combined chief data and analytics officers, so having that combination of both of them. I think as long as you've got a clear definition of what each of them are responsible for, it can work. But I think if you have too many of them, it becomes very much a bit of a Venn diagram of everyone overlapping and not clear of where that sits. I think if it's good to have a CDO on board. I think it raised that profile at the board level, who they
yeah,
report to. That's another question. Should they report to the CTO, the CIO? Which no, I think they should be the same. It's the same level. It's the same
yeah,
importance in a business. So yeah, so I do support, you know, having one, but the only advice I'd give is make sure you're not just hiring one just to have that tick box and have a clear definition of what they're able to do. I've seen some very frustrated CDOs that have come in and they think they're able to change the world, and then realised that no, that it's not. They can't change the systems, they can't change the integrations, they can't change. So what is in their control? So
what can they do? So
yeah,
because that's one of the other things that flows from that is that, okay, let's say you've got a CIO and you've got a CTO and you've got a CDO and you've got all those different roles, and everyone's like, well, that's great, we've got the full set now. But which bits of which bits of IT sit under which role? And like you say, CTO, naturally analytics kind of fits under that, but what else?
So the interesting part is I suppose with the conversation I said earlier about moving that analytics back into your operational system. So how I would have used to define it is the CEO looks after your operational systems, and maybe integrations between them, and then the CDO would own the data, and then if it's an analytics as well of it downstream or for its data science capabilities. So yeah, the water does become muddied, I think, of where we're not big enough to have to worry about them needing those roles internally, or if we have to. But it is something that larger companies need to have a clear understanding of what they're allowed to do or what their responsibility is.
Yeah, and it's funny enough, it's the same with any role really. But if one of the biggest areas where in the past I've seen problems with managing people and had problems myself is where roles aren't clear. If everyone's clear on what their role is, what they need to do, what the responsibilities are, what the output should look like, actually managing people is like massively improved and everyone has a good time. But when everyone's floundering around trying to figure out what they should be doing, that's always a recipe for disaster. Just because we're talking about data doesn't like change that fundamental truth.
True. I mean, a term I like to use recently is having pie-shaped people in your team. So we've always heard of this T-shaped before, which is breadth across a lot and depth across one. So about a pie having two legs. Pie being the pie for 22/7. That has two legs is the symbol. So it is having a breadth of knowledge, but having a deep knowledge in a couple of areas. And I've seen some of the best performing teams where you've got that guideline of okay, these are responsibility, but working as a team, but getting anything that needs to be done to get it across the line. So if it meant someone pitching in doing some of the Python that normally does the SQL, or some of the ETL that's doing some of the visualization, but having that, which really does help with that delivery of that data ops approach of being able to deliver quickly and iteratively. If you have a multi-disciplined team that's focused on the feature rather than a bit of feature.
And again, one of the other things though, and it's so important with teams is that thing like you said about just the people that will just stand up and be counted and take responsibility for getting something over the line. When I mean I've worked in some great teams and some not so great ones, and the great teams is when you've got a lot of people who will stand up and be counted and say, I'll get that done, I'll take ownership for it, and the more of those people you can have, the better. But they're rare in comparison. A lot of people are there for the a lot of people are happy to go be on the bus for the ride, but not many people not many people are driving it.
No. Exactly.
So one of the things to talk a little bit about now is probably a good thing to move on to is when things go wrong. I mean, what sort of data problems or projects you've been on where things have really gone wrong, and obviously it wouldn't be for your fault, Chris, but
of course, no.
But what sort of things can go wrong, and how big can that snowball into?
So I mean, we touched on it earlier. Is not understanding what you're building it for, who you're building it for. So I used that example earlier, but I've seen a technology-led replatforming, and it doesn't work. So Yeah, make it so. I've seen some, yeah, but some great failures where you just haven't managed expectations correctly, and then and you haven't actually managed to get to get the business involved to actually achieve what you're looking to achieve. I think so. I mean, some of the other thing is regression. How important regression is, or testing is nowadays, and so a particular retailer, fashion retailer. So they were looking at preventing people sending back items. So the common thing of everyone ordering it on you wearing it once and sending it back. So they decided to anyone that's returned things, we don't want them as a customer, or a high percentage, maybe 90% of anything they've ever bought returned. Yeah. So that's fine if you've been a customer for many years. If you just bought one item and returned that one because it didn't fit you, then it's not you're a serial non-returner. You've just not only returned something once. So yeah, I understand. Or making sure the requirements.
You can't get a trend with one. You can't get a trend with one data point.
No, exactly. And then also make sure you do any regression of any of these changes to see what the impact would be. So I think that's another one. I mean, one I like to quote from the news is of dark data. I think I refer to it is where data that's missing data, and we all make decisions based on the data we have. It's not often we make decisions on the data we don't have, and there's a thing about the World War II bombers, and only doing the analysis of the ones that came back to see what additional armored plating they needed, and funnily enough, they didn't put any on the engines because the ones that
came back, well, the engines were fine.
Yeah, exactly. But a much more recent one I like to quote was when the French were looking to change their fleet of trains, and they obviously looked to see the sizes of all the platforms they had and the widths and lengths and things. So they made sure they ordered these trains that would fit all of these particular ones. That's great if you had the measurements for all your stations. So so for the stations they didn't have, unfortunately, they were the ones that are much older, and the ones that are much older were built to the same size as the newer ones. So they had a big fleet of trains that couldn't actually fit onto a lot of the stations. So so there's some other business examples of making decisions on not enough data points, or having missing data points that you're not taking into account. So that's something that I've seen overlooked many times. It is making decisions on all the data, or at least knowing what you haven't got is a start.
I mean that's a real start, isn't it? Not because it's like one of the things you touched on before is with the data scientist thing is you don't know what you don't know. But the first thing you got to do there is at least figure out what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a really good start. I mean, there's like that dark data, which is data that you kind of you assume you've got the full data set for yourself. But what about and again, this is because this is a massive thing now in the world of data is I'll go and get data from outside. I'll go and get data. I'll get data from Google, or I'll get data from Facebook, or I'll get. So how much, how much of that have you been involved in? Have any of those kind of external data sets been really valuable, or is it something that people can just go down the wrong path really easily?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about credibility of those data sources. So, I mean, we've had some fun in our internal lab. I say fun, data fun, of where we were looking at flight paths and trying to map it onto longitude and latitudes. But I had the airport codes, but I didn't have the long and latitude for the airports. And I found a nice open data source set which was able to complement the one that I had. 95% of the airports, it found them, so it worked for that. So I think those sort of scenarios. There's some good open data sets that can be very useful. But then if there's other data sets that you've got, well, you don't know their source, you don't know their credibility, don't know their accuracy, there should be some caution if you're going to make certain business decisions on them. I always like to, in the past, sort of like call it identify the quality of your data by having a tiering system. Your gold plated, a sort of golden source of that data, or it's been gone through validation and cleansing. I think there's probably another classification if you're using external data of, okay, well, what's its credibility? And a lot of people put data sets up there sometimes to support some of the decisions they made there, which it may be biased. So again, just know the source of your data and the credibility of it, and you can't delegate that to someone else, because your business is making the decisions on that. So I think validate the source of it would be one thing I'd say.
Because one of the other things that kind of goes with that is that a lot of people are very tempted to sort of say mistake quantity for quality as well. But,
yes.
they sort of think, well, I've got tons of data, so it must be good. Discuss. It's like,
something I've said in the past is that data is an asset, and until well, your data can be an asset, but it can also be a liability. So if you've got data that's hanging around that may have sensitive information, which you could get fined for, keeping it is not. There's not much point in keeping it if you're not going to use it for anything. So I always say make sure that if you do have the data, make sure it's in a secure way. You only need to keep the retention you need. So don't pay for 15 years worth of data if you're ever going to, and if you're not allowed to keep 15 years worth, or if you've only got 7 years, archive it off, put it somewhere else, but do it securely. It would be the advice.
That's a really good point, and it kind of brings us on to, I mean, we kind of didn't say too much in this in the prequel, but we can get onto it now, and that is governance. Because one of the things you talked about there is there's various things that leads straight onto, and that's security, governance. That's kind of the two main threads on that. So what are your sort of main thoughts in this area that people should have in mind, apart from archive off the stuff you don't need and that sort of thing?
I mean, we're doing some really interesting work on data security with a company called Satori Cyber at the moment. So what I advise is that you need to make sure you're protecting that data, and it's a very complex thing. But also it's about and profiling that data and understanding who's allowed access to those different pieces. So we're working with some companies at the moment where we're putting a proxy across any of the data stores they can get access to, and the proxy is able to identify classifications of data with PCI, PII, and actually apply masking policies or tokenization or obfuscation according to those classifications. Those classifications, it identifies a lot out of the box, but then you can go and manage those pieces. So I think that really helps. I've seen lots of other approaches where it's that data discovery. Let's go and find all the data we've got so we can go and catalog it and then work out who has access. Very reactive. The approach here is more of a proactive approach where you're only capturing it as they're querying it. It's actually being used, and you're able to apply that security on the fly. But then also talk about the governance part. Pass off those that attribution that it may have found to your Calibras of the world, or Relations of the world, or your data catalogs of the world, of where you can you can have that attribution and on that usage. Another thing we like to do with on that governance thing is it's also data quality. It's okay, so great people own the attribution, great people own the usage of it. Those people need to own the quality of it as well. So and again, the business or people that understand that they would pick out, oh, why is the distinct number of customers gone up so much? Oh, that's because we just onboarded this new partner that gave. Oh, that's fine. Whereas if that happened, then well, that's strange. I wouldn't have expected that. So there's they can actually start to have that quality pane with that quality window where they look at the attribution, the usage, the security, the classifications, and the quality as well. So that's what I think big focus on.
And it's an interesting one because obviously on one side of it, if you've got the data scientists, they can look at statistical anomalies, but on the other side, for a lot of it, it's back to business domain knowledge, isn't it? It's back to
exactly
knowing your business and knowing what the numbers mean and whether they're sensible. And so I mean it's the same thing with a lot, not just the data projects we get involved in, but a lot of the software projects. There's no substitute for knowing your business.
Exactly.
So we're kind of getting towards the end of our time slot here, Chris. But do you have any other thoughts about if companies feel that they've got something, that there's an opportunity in data, but they don't quite know what it is? I mean, what would you say to them? Where would you tell them to start?
I always like to see what the CEO's status report, of the what the plans are, what he wants to achieve over that year. And they always talk about customers. They always talk about increasing their customer lifecycle value or retention and things like that. So I always try and say, okay, well, if these are the things that the CEO wants to achieve, let's look to see what could we actually satisfy that or actually help with that. Because if that's the case, you've already got buy-in already for that particular activity because that's what you want to do. And then try and find things that underpin that business statement that they want to achieve. But then I suppose the art is working out of those things that you could do, what's going to be the easiest with the quickest win that helps you go in the direction you want to go. So of understanding all those moving parts of what's taking the right direction. Everyone's journey is different. No one goes from point A to point B exactly. It's working out the path of the least resistance or the path that provides the most value in the quickest time.
Yeah, and because ultimately, there may be a fantastic potential project that could get you somewhere really good, but if it's outside of your budget for this year, you've got to pick something that you can afford to do, and that'll give you some benefit, and then maybe some of the bigger ticket stuff, the bigger ticket items can come later. But you've got to work with the business you've got. Okay, that's absolutely fantastic, Chris, and I'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast. But before we go, if you could just say a little about where people can get hold of you if they want to follow you or follow you on LinkedIn or whatever, where can they get hold of you?
So I'm obviously on LinkedIn. So it's Chris Tabb data tips now, I think is my URL on there. But hashtag data tips is another route. The company's website is www.leit.ltd. So one of those sources you should be able to get hold of us. But anyway, thank you very much for having us on here. It's been great chatting. As Andrew, it's been great to meet you via LinkedIn as well. And these chats they seem very seamless really, because I didn't realise that the time had gone so quick. So
that's thanks a lot, Chris. And hopefully we can pick up on some of those other topics that we had to park. We pick up on some of those soon.
Definitely. Maybe we can do a face-to-face one soon as well. That'd be good to maybe do it over a beer.
That would be brilliant. I can't wait till we can do that. That's brilliant. Okay, thanks a lot, Chris.
All right. Okay, thanks again. Take care.
Take care.